The twin suns of Zarian Prime cast long shadows across the broken landscape. Smoke rose from the ruins of what had once been a thriving mining colony. The air smelled of burned metal and fear. In the distance, the sound of heavy footsteps echoed. Through the empty streets, Commander Zethkar moved through the wreckage with the grace of a born hunter. He stood 8 feet tall, his dark scales gleaming in the orange light. His massive claws clicked against the concrete as he walked. Behind him, 6 more Vorthak warriors followed in perfect formation. Their yellow eyes scanned the area, looking. For any sign of movement, the Vorthak had been the galaxy's most feared predators for over 300 years. They were faster than most species, stronger than all of them, and completely without mercy. When they decided to hunt, nothing could stop them. Today they were hunting humans. Zethkar paused at the edge of a collapsed building. He lifted his head and breathed deeply. His enhanced senses could detect the faint smell of human fear. It was sweet and bitter at the same time, like fruit left too long in the sun. He had been tracking this particular scent for 2 days now. "Commander," one of his warriors said in their harsh, clicking language. "The trail leads toward the old mining facility." "They cannot have gone far?" Zethkar nodded. Humans were weak creatures. They had no natural weapons, no armor, no real strength to speak of. Most species in the galaxy at least had something to defend themselves with. The Krillians had their poisoned spines. The Thane had their thick shells. The Mordak could change color to hide, but humans, they were soft and pink and slow. They broke easily. They died quickly. Zethkar had hunted them before, and it was always disappointing. They would run and hide and beg for mercy. Sometimes they would try to fight back with their primitive weapons, but it never lasted long. Still, a hunt was a hunt. The Vorthak needed to keep their skills sharp. The galaxy was full of dangerous creatures, and only the strongest survived. Today's hunt would be good practice for his younger warriors. Lieutenant Jake Morrison crouched behind a pile of twisted metal, his breathing slow and controlled. Sweat ran down his face, but his hands were steady. Next to him, Dr. Lisa Matthews pressed a bloody cloth against the wound in her leg. She was trying not to make any noise, but Jake could see the pain in her eyes. "How bad is it?" he whispered. "Bad." "Enough," she replied through gritted teeth. "I can walk, but not for long, not fast," Jake nodded. He had been afraid of that. They had been running for hours, ever since their transport ship had been shot down. Most of the other survivors had scattered in different directions. Jake hoped some of them had made it to the emergency beacon, but he wasn't counting on it. The Vorthak were excellent hunters. They could track a scent for days without getting tired. They could see in the dark better than most species could see in daylight. And they never gave up once they started hunting. Jake looked out through a gap in the metal. The old mining facility was just 50 yards away. If they could reach it, they might find somewhere to hide. The building was big and full of tunnels. Maybe they could lose their pursuers in the maze of corridors. "Can you make it to the building?" he asked Dot. Lisa nodded. "I think so. But Jake, you know they'll find us eventually. The Vorthak don't stop hunting until they catch what they're after." Jake had heard the stories. Everyone in the galaxy had heard the stories. The Vorthak were the perfect predators. They had conquered dozens of worlds, enslaved entire species, and never once been defeated in battle. They were everything that evolution could create when it tried to make the ultimate killer. "Maybe," Jake said, "but we're not dead yet." He helped Lisa to her feet. She winced but didn't cry out. Jake had to admire her courage. She was a scientist, not a soldier. She had signed up to study alien plants and animals, not to run for her. Life across a hostile planet, they moved carefully toward the building. Jake kept his rifle ready, though he knew it wouldn't do much good against Vorthak armor. Still, it made him feel better to have it in his hands. The mining facility had been abandoned for years. The doors hung open, and vines had grown through the broken windows. Jake could see old equipment covered in dust and rust. It wasn't much, but it was shelter. They had almost reached the entrance when Jake heard it. The sound of claws on stone. The Vorthak were close. "Go," he whispered to Lisa. "Get inside and find somewhere to hide." "What about you?" "I'll be right behind you." But Jake knew that wasn't true. He could hear at least 6 different sets of footsteps. The Vorthak were spreading out, surrounding the building. Even if he and Lisa made it inside, they would be trapped. Lisa limped through the doorway and disappeared into the shadows. Jake was about to follow when he heard a voice behind him. "Human." The word was spoken in perfect English, but with the harsh accent of the Vorthak. Jake turned around slowly. Commander Zethkar stood 20 feet away, his massive form blocking out the light of the suns. His yellow eyes stared at Jake with the cold interest of a predator studying its prey. Behind him, the other Vorthak warriors moved into position. "You have led us on quite a chase," Zethkar said. "But the hunt ends now." Jake could feel his heart beating fast, but he kept his voice steady. "Does it?" Zethkar tilted his head. "Most prey would be begging for mercy by now, or trying to run. This human was doing neither. Interesting." "You are injured," Zethkar observed. "Your companion is wounded. You have no hope of escape. Yet you do not flee. Why?" Jake looked at the alien commander for a long moment. He could see the other Vorthak moving closer, their claws extended. He could hear Lisa breathing heavily somewhere behind him in the darkness of the building. "Because," Jake said, "someone has to draw the line somewhere." Zethkar's eyes narrowed. "Line? What line?" "The line between right and wrong. Between protecting the innocent and hurting them. Between being a person and being a monster." "The Vorthak." Commander laughed. It was a sound like breaking glass. "You speak of lines and morality, but we are predators, human. We hunt because it is our nature. You are prey because you are weak. Maybe," Jake said, "but I'm not going to make it easy for you." He stepped forward, placing himself directly between the Vorthak and the building entrance. His rifle was in his hands, but he wasn't pointing it at anyone yet. He was just standing there, calm and ready. Zethkar studied the human more carefully. There was something different about this one. He showed no fear, no desperation. He stood like a soldier, like someone who had made a choice, and would not be moved from it. "You would die for a stranger?" Zethkar asked. "If I have to," Jake replied. The Vorthak commander had hunted hundreds of species across the galaxy. He had seen courage before, and he had seen sacrifice. But he had never seen anything quite like this. The human was not brave because he thought he could win. He was brave because he had decided that some things were more important than his own life. "Fascinating," Zethkar said. "Very well, human. Show me what your species calls courage." The hunt was about to begin in earnest. But something told Zethkar that this would be unlike any hunt he had ever known. The 6 Vorthak warriors spread out in a wide circle around Jake. Their movements were perfect, like a machine designed for killing. Each warrior knew exactly where the others were without looking. They had done this dance 1,000 times before. Jake watched them move, his soldier's mind automatically analyzing their formation. They were trying to surround him, cut off any escape routes, standard predator tactics. The problem was, it was working. "You interest me, human," Zethkar said, his voice carrying easily across the empty space. "Most of your kind would be running by now, or crying, or offering us valuable information in exchange for a quick death." "Sorry to disappoint you," Jake replied. "Oh, you do not disappoint me, quite the opposite." Zethkar's yellow eyes gleamed. "It has been far too long since we encountered prey that might actually provide some challenge." Behind Jake, inside the mining facility, Lisa pressed herself against the wall. She could hear every word through the open doorway. Her scientific mind was working even through her fear and pain. She had studied the Vorthak for years. Read every report about their hunting patterns and behavior. They always played with their prey first. They liked to see fear, to smell terror. It made the hunt more satisfying for them. But Jake was not giving them what they wanted. He was standing there like a rock in a river, unmoved by the current of danger flowing around him. "Your friend is injured," Zethkar continued. "She needs medical attention. Surrender now, and we will make her death quick and painless." How generous, Jake said. But I have a better idea. Why don't you just walk away? The Vorthak warriors looked at each other. In 300 years of hunting, no prey had ever told them to leave. The very idea was so strange that they were not sure how to respond. Zethkar laughed again. That sounded like breaking glass. Walk away? From a hunt that has already begun? You clearly do not understand what we are. I understand perfectly, Jake said. You're bullies. You pick on people who can't fight back because it makes you feel strong, but you're not strong. You're just big. The words hit the Vorthak like a physical blow. To be called weak was the greatest insult possible in their culture. Several of the warriors snarled and took a step forward. Careful, Zethkar warned his warriors. Then he looked back at Jake. You think we are weak? You who cannot even grow proper claws? You whose skin tears like paper? You who need tools. To survive, tools make us smart, Jake said. Smart beats strong every time. Does it? Zethkar gestured to his warriors. Then prove it. The attack came from 3 directions at once. The Vorthak moved with incredible speed, their claws extended, their mouths open to show rows of sharp teeth. Any normal person would have been dead in seconds. Jake was not normal. He dropped to one knee and fired his rifle in a controlled burst. The energy bolt struck the nearest warrior in the chest, spinning him around. At the same time, Jake rolled to his left, avoiding the claws of the second attacker by inches. The third warrior was already on him. Massive arms reaching to grab the human, Jake slipped under the creature's grasp and came up behind him. Instead of trying to fight the much larger alien, he used the warrior's own momentum against him, tripping him into a pile of broken concrete. The whole exchange took less than 5 seconds. When it was over, one Vorthak was down with a chest wound, another was struggling to get back to his feet, and the third was shaking his head in confusion. Zethkar stared at the human. That should not have been possible. The Vorthak were faster than humans, stronger than humans, better fighters than humans. Yet somehow this soft, pink creature had just disabled 3 of his best warriors. Impossible, one of the remaining warriors snarled. Nothing is impossible, Jake said, his rifle now trained on the group. You just have to know how to think. But even as he spoke, Jake knew he was in trouble. He had surprised them once, but surprise only worked if you could use it too. Escape. And there was nowhere to run. The wounded warrior was already getting back to his feet. His armor had absorbed most of the energy from Jake's rifle. In a few moments, he would be ready to fight again. The other 2 were unhurt, just surprised. Impressive, Zethkar admitted. You fight like a warrior, not like prey. But you are still outnumbered 6 to 1. I've had worse odds, Jake said. It was not entirely true. But Jake had learned long ago that confidence was half the battle. If your enemy thought you were beaten, you were beaten. If they thought you might win, they would be more careful, more likely to make mistakes. Have you? Zethkar studied Jake with new interest. Tell me, human, what is your name? Jake Morrison. Lieutenant Terran Defense Corps, a soldier. That explains much. Zethkar nodded approvingly. I am Commander Zethkar of the Vorthak hunting fleets. I have killed more than 1,000 sentient beings in honorable combat. Congratulations, Jake said dryly. Your mother must be very proud. Several of the Vorthak warriors made angry sounds. Mocking their commander was another serious insult. But Zethkar held up a hand to stop them. You have courage, Lieutenant Morrison, and skill, but do you have honor? That depends on what you mean by honor. I mean this. Zethkar stepped forward, his own claws extending. Face me in single combat. If you win, my warriors and I will leave this place. If I win, you die quickly, and your friend receives medical treatment before she joins you. Jake considered the offer. He could hear Lisa's labored breathing behind him. She was getting weaker. Even if he somehow managed to defeat all 6 Vorthak, she might not survive long enough to reach help. And if I refuse, then we kill you both slowly. And the hunt continues until we find the rest of your people. It was not much of a choice. Jake looked at the massive alien commander. Zethkar was at least 3 feet taller than him and probably outweighed him by 200 pounds. His claws were like knives, his teeth like razors. In a fair fight, Jake would lose, but Jake had never believed in fair fights. "All right," Jake said. "Single combat it is. But I have one condition. Name it. No weapons, just hand to hand." The Vorthok warriors looked confused. Their claws and teeth were natural weapons. They were part of their bodies. But Zethkar seemed to understand what Jake was asking. "You want me to fight without using my claws or teeth?" "I want you to fight like a person, not like an animal." The insult was clear, but Zethkar did not take offense. Instead, he seemed almost amused. "Very well. But why would you ask for such a thing? It gives you no advantage, doesn't it?" Jake set his rifle down on the ground and kicked it away. "Let's find out." Zethkar retracted his claws and closed his mouth. Even without his natural weapons, he was still a formidable opponent. His fists were like hammers, his reach was enormous, and his strength was incredible. The two combatants circled each other in the fading light of the twin suns. Around them, the other Vorthok warriors watched in fascination. They had never seen their commander fight without his claws before. Inside the mining facility, Lisa watched through the doorway with growing horror. Jake was brave, but he was also human. He was going to die, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. "This is madness," she whispered, but Jake had heard her. He looked back over his shoulder for just a moment and smiled. "Maybe," he said. "But sometimes madness is the only sane response to an insane situation." Then he turned back to face Zethkar, and the real fight began. Zethkar moved first, his massive fist cutting through the air where Jake's head had been a split second before. The human had dropped low and rolled to the side, coming up in a fighting stance that the Vorthok commander had never seen before. "Interesting," Zethkar said, turning to face Jake again. "You move like water," Jake did not reply. He was studying his opponent, looking for weaknesses. Zethkar was incredibly strong and fast, but he was also huge. Big creatures had more mass to move around. They had longer limbs that took time to change direction. They had more body to protect. The Vorthok commander attacked again, this time with both fists. Jake ducked under the first punch and sidestepped the second. As Zethkar's arm passed by, Jake grabbed the alien's wrist and used his momentum to spin him around. For a moment, the 8-foot-tall predator was off balance. Jake could have struck then, could have landed a blow to the creature's back or neck. Instead, he let go and stepped away. "Why did you not attack?" Zethkar demanded. "You had an opening, did I?" Jake asked. The Vorthok commander thought about it. His armor was thick, his scales were hard. Even if the human had hit him, it would not have done much damage. But the human had seen something that Zethkar had not. They circled each other again. Around them, the other Vorthok warriors watched, in silence. They had never seen their commander fight this way before. Without his claws, without his teeth, he seemed almost ordinary. "You are studying me," Zethkar realized. "Learning my patterns. Everything has patterns," Jake said. "Even you." It was true. Jake had been watching the way Zethkar moved, the way he attacked. The alien was incredibly skilled, but he was also predictable. He had been the strongest fighter in every battle for so long that he had never learned to be creative. Zethkar lunged forward, trying to grab Jake in a bear hug. The human slipped away at the last second, but this time the Vorthok commander was ready. He spun around quickly, his backhand catching Jake across the chest. The blow sent Jake flying backward into a pile of scrap metal. He hit hard, pain shooting through his ribs. For a moment, he could not breathe. The world spun around him. "There," Zethkar said with satisfaction. "Now you know what real strength feels like." Jake struggled to his feet, blood running from a cut on his forehead. His chest hurt with every breath. But he was still alive, still fighting. "That all you got?" Jake asked. The Vorthok warriors made sounds of amazement. The human had just been hit by a blow that would have killed most creatures. Yet he was still standing, still defiant. Zethkar charged again, but this time Jake was ready. He waited until the last possible moment, then dropped to the ground and swept his leg out. The massive alien tripped and went down hard, his head striking the concrete. Before Zethkar could get up, Jake was on him. But instead of trying to hurt the downed alien, he was checking to make sure Zethkar was not seriously injured. "What are you doing?" Zethkar demanded, pushing Jake away. "Making sure you're okay," Jake said simply. "We are in combat. You should be trying to kill me. Why? You're not trying to kill me." It was true. Zethkar realized that he had been pulling his punches, holding back his full strength. If he had wanted to kill the human, he could have done it easily. But something about Jake's fighting style, his refusal to use dirty tactics, had made the Vorthek commander respond in kind. "You are making this into a game," Zethkar said. "No," Jake replied. "I'm making it into a test. A test of what?" "Of whether you're really the monster you pretend to be." The words hit Zethkar harder than any physical blow. He stared at the human, trying to understand what Jake meant. The Vorthek were predators. They hunted, they killed, they conquered. That was their nature. That was who they were. But as he looked at Jake, bloodied but unbroken, Zethkar began to wonder if there was another way to be strong inside the mining facility. Lisa watched the strange combat with growing amazement. She had studied dozens of species, but she had never seen anything like this. Jake was not just fighting the Vorthek commander, he was teaching him something. "He's showing them mercy," she whispered to herself. "He's showing them that strength doesn't have to mean cruelty." The fight continued, but it was different now. Zethkar was still trying to win, but he was also trying to understand. Every time Jake had a chance to cause serious harm, he chose not to. Every time Zethkar was vulnerable, Jake would help him up instead of pressing his advantage. "You could have blinded me," Zethkar said after Jake pulled back from a strike aimed at his eyes. "Yes," Jake agreed. "You could have broken my arm when I was off balance. Yes, you could have used that piece of metal as a weapon. Yes, Then, why did you not?" Jake wiped blood from his mouth and looked at the alien commander. "Because I'm not fighting you to hurt you. I'm fighting you to show you something." "Show me what?" "That being strong and being cruel are not the same thing." Zethkar stood very still. Around them, the other Vorthek warriors were equally motionless. They were all thinking about what the human had said. "We are predators," one of the warriors said. "We hunt. We kill. It is our nature." "Is it?" Jake asked. "Or is it just what you've been told?" He gestured to Zethkar. "Your commander is the strongest fighter I've ever seen. But he's been holding back this entire fight. He could have killed me a dozen times over, but he chose not to. What does that tell you about his nature?" The Vorthek warriors looked at their commander with new eyes. It was true. Zethkar could have ended the fight at any time, but he had not. He had been fighting with honor, with restraint. "You think we can change?" Zethkar asked. "I think you already have," Jake said. "You just haven't realized it yet." The Vorthek commander looked down at his hands. For the first time in his life, he was not sure what they were for. Were they for killing? For destroying? Or could they be used for something else? "What are you?" he asked Jake. "I'm a human, just like you're a Vorthek. The difference is, we choose what that means." "And what does it mean to be human?" Jake smiled, despite his injuries. "It means we protect people who can't protect themselves. It means we fight for something bigger than ourselves. It means we show mercy even when we don't have to." "That sounds like weakness." "Does it? Look around you. You have 6 of the galaxy's most dangerous predators and 1 injured human. Who's winning?" Zethkar looked at his warriors, then back at Jake. The human was right. They had come here to hunt easy prey, and instead they had found something that challenged everything they believed about strength and weakness. "The fight is not over," Zethkar said, but his voice lacked conviction. "No," Jake agreed. "But it doesn't have to end the way you think it does." He extended his hand toward the Vorthek commander. "We can choose a different ending." Zethkar stared at the offered hand for a long moment. It was such a simple gesture, but it represented something revolutionary. The human was offering partnership. Instead of conquest, understanding instead of domination, slowly, very slowly, Zethkar reached out and took Jake's hand. The moment their fingers touched, something fundamental changed in the galaxy. The greatest predators in known space had just learned that there was more than one way to be strong, And somewhere in the darkness of the mining facility, Lisa smiled through her tears. She knew she was watching history being made. The handshake lasted only a few seconds, but it changed everything. When Zethkar let go of Jake's hand, he looked different somehow. His yellow eyes held a confusion that had never been there before. I do not understand, he said quietly. You had me defeated? You could have claimed victory? Why did you choose to help me instead? Because victory isn't about defeating your enemy, Jake replied. It's about solving the problem. And the problem here isn't that you're strong. It's that you've been using your strength for the wrong reasons. The other Vorthik warriors shifted uncomfortably. They had been raised from birth to believe that might made right. The strong ruled over the weak because that was the natural order of things. But this human was suggesting something completely different. You speak in riddles, one of the warriors said. Strength is strength. The weak serve the strong. This is the way of the universe. Jake looked at the warrior who had spoken. He was younger than Zethkar, with brighter scales and sharper claws. His name was Crystal, and he had killed more humans than any of the others. Is it? Jake asked. Then why are you all standing here listening to me instead of killing me? Crystal snarled. Because our commander has ordered us to wait. No, Zethkar said slowly. That is not why. The commander was still staring at Jake, trying to understand what he was feeling. For the first time in his life, he had met someone who was stronger than him. Not physically stronger, but strong in a way that mattered more. Then why? Crystal demanded. Because, Zethkar said, we are curious. It was true. The Vorthak had conquered dozens of worlds, enslaved hundreds of species. They had never encountered anything they could not understand through force. But this human was different. He fought like a warrior, but fought like something else entirely. Curious about what? Another warrior asked. About what we might become, Zethkar replied. Jake nodded approvingly. That's the first step, admitting that you have a choice. We have always had choices, Crystal protested. Have you? When was the last time you chose not to hunt? When was the last time you showed mercy to an enemy? When was the last time you helped someone who couldn't help you back? The warriors looked at each other. They could not remember a single time when they had done any of those things. Their entire culture was built around taking what they wanted and destroying what they could not use. Those are the actions of the weak, Crystal said, but his voice lacked conviction, are they? Jake gestured toward the mining facility where Lisa was hiding. There's an injured woman in that building. She can't fight, she can't run, she can't offer you anything of value. By your definition, she's completely worthless. Yes, Crystal agreed, and yet I'm willing to die to protect her. What does that make me? The young warrior opened his mouth to say, weak, but the word would not come. He had just watched this human fight their greatest commander to a standstill. He had seen Jake turn his own weakness into strength, his compassion into a weapon more dangerous than any claw or tooth. It makes you, Zethkar said quietly, something we have never encountered before. Jake smiled. It makes me human. But it could make you something new too if you wanted it to. New how? Zethkar asked. You're the most powerful warriors in the galaxy. Imagine what you could accomplish if you used that power to protect people instead of hunting them. Imagine how many lives you could save instead of taking. The idea was so foreign to the Vorthak that they could barely comprehend it. They had spent centuries perfecting the art of destruction. The thought of creation, of protection, of nurturing was completely alien to them. Why would we want to save lives? Crystal asked. What purpose would that serve? The same purpose that hunting serves, Jake said. It would make you feel strong. But it would be a different kind of strength. The kind that builds up instead of tearing down. Inside the mining facility, Lisa listened to the conversation with growing amazement. Jake was not just fighting for their lives anymore. He was fighting for the souls of the galaxy's most dangerous predators. She thought about her years of research, all the species she had studied. Most evolution led to greater specialization, to creatures becoming better and better at one specific thing. But humans had evolved differently. They had become generalists, adapters, capable of changing their nature to meet new challenges. And now Jake was offering that same gift to the Vorthek. You ask us to become something we are not, Zethkar said. No, Jake replied. I'm asking you to become something you could be. You're already warriors. You're already strong. You're already brave. All I'm suggesting is that you point those qualities in a different direction. Toward what? Toward justice? Toward protection? Toward building something better than what exists now. Zethkar was quiet for a long time. Around him, his warriors waited for orders that did not come. The twin suns of Zarian Prime were setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. There are many dangers in the galaxy, Zethkar said finally. Pirates who prey on merchant ships. Slavers who steal children from their families. Warlords who conquer peaceful worlds for profit. Yes, Jake agreed, there are. The weak species cannot defend themselves against such threats. No, they can't. They need protectors. Jake nodded. They do. Zethkar looked at his warriors. Then back at Jake. You are suggesting that we become those protectors. I'm suggesting that you already are those protectors. You just haven't been protecting the right people. The Vorthek commander walked over to where Jake's rifle lay on the ground. He picked it up and examined it carefully. It was a simple weapon, effective but not particularly advanced. Any Vorthek warrior could have built something similar. This weapon saved your life today, Zethkar said. No, Jake replied. This weapon just bought me time. What saved my life was the choice you made not to kill me when you could have. Zethkar handed the rifle back to Jake. Keep it. You may need it again. Will one? That depends on what you do next. Jake took the weapon but did not point it at anyone. What I do next is help my friend get medical attention. After that, I go back to my ship and file a report saying that the Vorthek are no longer a threat to human colonies. And if your superiors do not believe you, then I'll make them believe me. Crystal stepped forward. You would trust us after we hunted you? After we tried to kill you? Trust has to start somewhere, Jake said. Might as well be here. The young warrior stared at Jake for a long moment. Then slowly he retracted his claws. I have never met a human before today. What do you think of us? I think, Crystal said carefully, that we have much to learn from you. Zethkar nodded approvingly. Yes, we do. He turned to address all of his warriors. The hunt is over. We return to our ship. Commander, one of the warriors asked. What? Do we tell the others? What do we tell the hunting council? Zethkar looked at Jake one more time. We tell them that we found something more dangerous than any prey we have ever tracked. We found a mirror that showed us what we could become. As the Vorthek warriors began to move away, Zethkar paused. Lieutenant Morrison, yes? When your friend is healed, when you return to your people, remember this moment. Remember that enemies can become allies. Remember that strength can be. Used to build as well as destroy. I will, Jake promised. Good, because the galaxy is about to change. And it will need people like you to guide that change. With that, the Vorthek commander turned and walked away, his warriors following behind. Jake watched them go, knowing that something fundamental had shifted in the universe. Behind him, Lisa limped out of the mining facility. Jake, is it over? Yes, he said, helping her stand. It's over, but I think something else is just beginning. Above them, the stars were coming out, bright points of light in the gathering darkness. Somewhere among those stars, the word would spread that the galaxy's greatest predators had learned a new way to be strong, and the universe would never be the same. The storm had passed 3 days ago, but Jake Harrison still felt its effects in his aching bones. His left arm hung in a makeshift sling, and deep cuts covered his face and hands. Yet he continued to work alongside the other survivors, helping to rebuild what the storm had destroyed. Kazeth watched from the shadows of the twisted metal wreckage. The massive void hunter had not attacked since the storm. Something had changed inside him, though he could not name what it was. He told himself he was simply studying his prey, learning their weaknesses. But deep down he knew that was a lie. The humans moved with purpose around their damaged camp. Children who should have been crying were instead helping adults carry supplies. Elderly people who should have been resting were tending to the wounded. Everyone worked together, sharing what little they had without complaint. Jake stood near the center of the camp, directing the repair efforts. His voice was calm and steady, even though exhaustion showed in every line of his body. He had not slept properly in days, always checking on others, always making sure everyone had what they needed. "Lisa, how are the medical supplies holding up?" Jake asked the doctor as she emerged from the makeshift medical tent. Dr. Lisa Bennett looked tired but determined. "We have enough antibiotics for maybe another week. The bandages are running low, too." She paused and looked at Jake with concern. "You need to rest. You're pushing yourself too hard." Jake shook his head. "I'm fine. The children need to eat first, then the elderly. Make sure everyone else gets food before I do." Captain Roy Martinez approached them, his face grim. "Jake, we have a problem. The main support beam in Section 7 is cracking. If it falls, it could crush the area where we store most of our water." Jake nodded slowly. "How long do we have?" "Maybe a few hours. The metal is stressed from the storm." "It could go at any time." Jake looked around at his people. They were already exhausted from 3 days of constant work. Asking them to move the heavy water containers would push them beyond their limits, but there was no choice. "Gather everyone who can lift," Jake said. "We'll work in teams. Small loads, frequent breaks. No one pushes beyond what they can handle." As the humans began the dangerous work of moving their water supply, Kazeth found himself moving closer. The beam creaked and groaned with each passing minute. Cracks spread along its surface like spider webs. The humans worked quickly but carefully, forming human chains to pass the heavy containers to safety. Then disaster struck. A child's scream pierced the air. 8-year-old Tony Chen and his younger sister, Amy, had been playing near the beam when a section of loose metal crashed down, trapping them underneath. The impact caused the main beam to shift, and the entire structure began to collapse. "Everyone, back!" Roy shouted. But Jake was already running toward the trapped children. The space was too small for the adults to reach the children easily. The metal was sharp and twisted, and the whole area could collapse at any moment. Jake squeezed through the narrow gap, ignoring the jagged edges that tore at his clothes and skin. "I've got you," Jake whispered to the frightened children. Tommy had a cut on his forehead and Amy was crying, but neither seemed seriously hurt. But as Jake tried to lift the children out, the main beam shifted again. A loud crack echoed through the area, and everyone could see that the structure was about to fall. "Jake, get out of there!" Lisa shouted. Jake looked at the children, then at the narrow opening. He could probably get out himself, but not with both children. The space was too small, and they were too scared to move quickly. "Roy, I need you to take Amy first," Jake called out. "Tommy, you're going to help your sister, okay?" Jake lifted Amy and pushed her toward the opening where Roy waited. The captain pulled the little girl to safety just as another section of metal crashed down, making the opening even smaller. "Now, Tommy," Jake said, but as he lifted the boy, the main beam let out a final, terrible groan. Jake made a choice that would change everything. Instead of trying to escape with Tommy, he shoved the boy toward the opening with all his strength. Roy caught Tommy and pulled him clear just as the entire structure began to collapse. Jake was trapped. The other humans rushed forward, but there was nothing they could do. Tons of twisted metal had fallen, creating a wall between Jake and the rest of the camp. They could hear him moving inside, but the space was too dangerous and unstable for anyone to attempt a rescue. "Jake, can you hear us?" Lisa called out. "I'm okay," came Jake's voice, though it sounded weak. "Just a little banged up. Don't try to come in here. The whole thing could come down." "We're going to get you out," Roy said firmly. "No," Jake replied. "It's too dangerous. You have responsibilities to the others. Take care of them." From his hiding place, Kazeth watched the humans' reaction. They did not accept Jake's words. Instead, they began working immediately to find a way to reach him. They brought tools and ropes, trying different approaches. Even the children helped, bringing water and supplies. but Kazeth could see what the humans could not. The structure was too unstable. Any attempt to move the heavy beams would likely cause a complete collapse. Jake was right, trying to save him would only result in more deaths, yet the humans continued to try. Hours passed. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the camp. The humans worked by torchlight, their faces determined despite their exhaustion. They had already lost so much. They would not lose Jake without a fight. Kazeth found himself moving closer to the collapsed structure. His enhanced senses could detect things the humans could not. He could hear Jake's labored breathing, smell the blood from his injuries, feel the vibrations that showed how unstable the metal remained. "Jake," Lisa called out, "how are you doing in there?" "I'm fine," Jake replied, though his voice was getting weaker. "Just tired? Tell me about the others. Are Tommy and Amy okay?" "They're fine," Lisa said, tears in her voice. "Tommy keeps asking when you're coming out. Amy drew you a picture." Jake was quiet for a moment. "Tell them I'm proud of them. Tell them to take care of each other." "You can tell them yourself when we get you out," Roy said stubbornly. "Roy?" Jake's voice was gentle but firm. "You know that's not going to happen. This metal is too unstable. I need you to promise me something." "Jake, don't talk like that. Promise me you'll take care of everyone. Make sure the children eat first. Make sure the elderly get the warmest blankets. Make sure no one gets left behind. Jake, promise me." There was silence for a long moment, then Roy's voice thick with emotion. "I promise." Kazeth had heard enough. The great predator moved forward, his massive form emerging from the shadows. The humans saw him and immediately formed a protective circle, even though they knew they could not fight him, but Kazeth did not attack. Instead, he approached the collapsed structure and examined it with his enhanced senses. The humans watched in confusion as he studied the metal, testing its stability. "What are you doing?" Lisa asked, her voice filled with suspicion and fear. Kazeth did not answer. He had found what he was looking for, a section of the structure that could be moved without causing a total collapse. It would require precise application of force, the kind that only someone with his strength and control could manage. The Void Hunter began to work. His claws, so often used for killing, now worked to save a life. He carefully removed smaller pieces of debris, then used his massive strength to lift a heavy beam that the humans could never have moved. "Stay back," he warned the humans, his voice a deep rumble. Jake's voice came from inside the structure. "What's happening out there?" "The monster is here," Roy said, his hand on his weapon. "But he's trying to help." "Help?" Jake sounded surprised. Kazeth continued his work in silence. It took him nearly an hour to create a stable opening large enough for the humans to reach Jake. When he finished, he stepped back and watched as Lisa and Roy crawled inside to help. Their leader, they emerged supporting Jake between them. The human leader was badly injured, with cuts and bruises covering his body, but he was alive. The other humans gathered around him, relief clear on their faces. Jake looked up at Kazeth, confusion in his eyes. "Why?" he asked simply. Kazeth stared down at the small, injured human. This fragile creature had risked his life to save two children, who were not even his own. He had put the welfare of others above his own survival. He had shown a strength that had nothing to do with physical power. "You are not prey," Kazeth said slowly. "You are something else. Something I have never seen before?" Jake tried to stand, but his injuries made him stumble. Roy and Lisa caught him, supporting him between them. Even injured and exhausted, Jake looked directly at Kazeth without fear. "What are you going to do now?" Jake asked. Kazeth looked around. At the humans, at the children who had been saved, at the adults who had worked tirelessly to rescue their leader, at the elderly who had shared their meager supplies without complaint. He saw a strength that he had never understood before. These creatures were weak individually, but together they were something powerful. They chose to protect the vulnerable instead of abandoning them. They chose to share instead of hoarding. They chose to hope instead of despair. In that moment, Kazeth understood why his species had never been able to truly defeat humanity. It was not because humans were physically strong or technologically advanced.